The Scottish First Minister has told this programme that if the SNP wins a majority in May's Holyrood elections, then he'll demand a new independence referendum. John Swinney said Keir Starmer would no longer be Prime Minister if that happened. I spoke to him at Bute House in Edinburgh in the first of our series of interviews with First Ministers around the UK. First Minister, you're asking the Scottish people to give you 4 more years in power after nearly 2 decades. Let me start here. Scots rightly used to pride themselves on the superior educational attainments of Scottish children. On your watch, Scottish children have fallen behind English pupils on maths and on English, in spite of the fact you spent a lot of money on it. Why should you be rewarded for making Scottish children less successful?
What we've seen over the lifetime of the SNP government is a long-term historic problem in Scottish education being tackled, which is the attainment gap, the difference between the attainment of children from deprived backgrounds and from less deprived backgrounds. And we've seen that reduce very significantly by over 60% over the lifetime of the SNP government. And in the most recent data that was published by the education system, we saw record levels of literacy and numeracy within Scotland's schools. So what I would say is that the performance of our education system is getting stronger.
But it's not exactly the answer to the question I asked you, is it? Because actually there has been a long-term decline. The PISA scores, the international standard for this, Scottish children on both maths and English are south of where they were in 2018. They are now less, their attainment is less than English children, which always used to be it always used to be a thing that you knew that the Scottish children were doing better than English children. And that's happened on your watch in the last decade.
What we've seen is that is one measure of the performance of the Scottish education system. But of course there are other measures, and the measure I've just given you about literacy and numeracy levels within Scottish education is the assessment of the performance of children and young people as they go through different stages in our education system.
All right, let's talk about another aspect of your government's performance. Your most famous campaign slogan, even, I, a soft southerner, have heard this, it's Scotland's oil. It's always been at the heart of the SNP's case for independence, that oil would be part of your success. Now, you've ditched your predecessor's policy of having a presumption against new oil and gas. But you're not saying drill, baby, drill, are you? Just to be absolutely clear, are you going to support or oppose licensing of new oil fields?
Well, the first thing to say is that any decisions about the licensing of new oil fields are decisions for the United Kingdom government. They are not decisions that my government takes within Scotland. But the most important...
But whether you support it or not does matter.
That's just what I'm coming on to. And the key question that we ask about any new oil or gas developments is, are they able to be taken forward in a fashion that's compatible with our obligations on climate change? That is the absolute test that has got to be put in place.
Well, let me ask you about the case in point, really. Grangemouth is not going to produce green fuel. Hundreds of jobs have already been lost there. The UK government, Westminster says, is going to put £125 million in to save jobs. We think 500 or thereabouts. Rachel Reeves says that the Scottish government has been standing on the sidelines. What's going to be your contribution to saving jobs at Grangemouth, other than complaining that Westminster is not doing enough?
Well, we've already set out a financial commitment to essentially to supporting the transition at Grangemouth, and we set out a commitment to £25 million of investment in Grangemouth. And for some time we've been working on a venture called Project Willow, which is a partnership actually with the United Kingdom government to find new opportunities at Grangemouth, but use it in a way that is supportive of our journey to net zero by the development of alternative technologies.
Scots have to judge you on your record. Talked about education, we're talking now about the economy. Scotland is experiencing a wave of deindustrialisation. Scots know what you've delivered, and you've delivered the beginnings of the deindustrialisation of this country. Why should they vote for you?
Well, I don't accept that characterisation. Yes, there is industrial change that we're facing because of the issues in relation to the transition to net zero. Part of my argument to the United Kingdom government, for example, is that the upsurge of renewables has not been as fast as many of us would have hoped it would be, and the decline of the North Sea oil and gas...
Is Miliband getting it wrong?
Well, the pace is not as fast as it needs to be to compensate for the implications of the Energy Profits Levy, which is a product of UK government decision-making, which is making it more and more difficult to sustain activities in the North Sea. So there's a balance to be constructed.
You've been clear in your criticism of Westminster as being hostile to immigrants. Your activists, I see, come out on the streets in Glasgow and other Scottish towns saying migrants are welcome. You've had a really big go at reform. But your council leader in Scotland's biggest local authority says Glasgow is at breaking point, and she's specifically referring to asylum seekers and immigrants. Now, does Scotland, under the SNP, want more immigrants or not?
We want to be welcoming to migrants coming to Scotland because we have shortages in the size of our working age population.
So Scotland, you do want more immigrants to come to Scotland?
So we need more workers in Scotland because our working age population is not as large as it needs to be. We've got very, very low unemployment in Scotland today, comparatively significantly lower than the rest of the United Kingdom. So we need to have people coming to Scotland to supplement our workforce, our working age population.
So what are you going to say to Susie Atkins when next time she says we can't have any more immigrants?
Well, the issue that Susan Aitken's not saying that. What Susan Aitken is saying...
Well, she says we're at breaking point. That's the phrase she used.
Well, the issue is about how all of this has been handled between the Home Office and Glasgow City Council, because the Home Office is not giving adequate time or support for individuals to become settled, and that's giving rise to incredible pressure on housing stock.
Can I just ask you a quick question about defence? You want Scotland to be rid of nuclear weapons. That's the SNP's policy. You've always been behind that. You don't want nuclear subs at Faslane. And that would mean the base and its jobs going. Some people would say that you're a bigger threat to the Royal Navy than Vladimir Putin.
No, what we want to make sure is that we've got the effective conventional forces that can ensure our safety and security as a country. That's always been our point of view, and indeed the Faslane base is ideally suited and situated to enable that type of protection to be offered to the coastline and to the waters of Scotland.
I want to ask you a very straightforward question. Supreme Court was as clear as daylight last year that sex means biological sex. Why are you still putting people with penises in women's prisons?
Well, there's obviously some complex legal issues that have got to be worked through as a consequence of the Supreme Court judgment indicated that there is a necessity for us to take account of the rights of transgender individuals, and that's the issue that has to be considered as part of the court.
It was as clear as daylight. You cannot put a person with a penis in a woman's prison.
But when you look at the Supreme Court judgment, what they said was that nothing that we do, and we as a government have to always obey the law, can in any way undermine the rights that are assured to individuals who are transgender individuals, and we have to respect that.
Are you sure you're not just dragging your feet here because because the SNP was on the wrong side of the legal judgment here?
No, because in various other areas we have changed the regulations that are in place and the guidance that are in place, so we've done that.
All right, let me just take you finally to, if you like, vulgar politics. Obviously, you want to win a majority in May. If you do win a majority, are you going to take that as a green light to demand another referendum on independence?
Yes.
So, absolutely, this May is effectively, in your mind, an independence election.
I'm being straightforward with people in Scotland that if people in Scotland want Scotland to become independent, the SNP has got to do really well in this forthcoming election.
When Keir Starmer says, as he almost certainly will do, no, you can't have a referendum, what are you going to do? I
think there's two things about that. First of all, the United Kingdom is allegedly a partnership of equals. So Scotland has got a democratic right to decide our own future. And secondly, If I win a majority in the Scottish Parliament elections in May of this year, I don't think Keir Starmer will be the Prime Minister.
You don't think Keir Starmer will be there? Do you expect to see Keir Starmer in office at Christmas time?
No, I don't.
Because his party...
Well, look, I think it's patently obvious the Labour Party is absolutely toiling just now. And when I look at the opinion polls that are taking place in Wales just now, it looks highly likely it will not be a Labour First Minister in Wales, it will be a Plaid Cymru First Minister. The polls in Scotland are encouraging but not certain for the Scottish National Party. I'm working very hard to win the election, so we'll find ourselves in a situation where after May there'll be the potential for a Sinn Féin First Minister in Northern Ireland, a Plaid Cymru First Minister in Wales, an SNP First Minister in Scotland, and reform all over the place in England. And I think that's the end of the road for Keir Starmer.
And is it, by implication, the end of the road for the United Kingdom?
I think the United Kingdom has... Well, I want Scotland to be independent, and that's my policy objective, it's my political objective.
One last question, which is, in a way, a personal question. You've been in Scottish politics for a long time. You've been a big figure in UK politics. But you were always, if I can put it this way, the ballast to Salmond and Sturgeon. You were the reassuring presence. What do you bring that's different to those two leaders?
Well, I think what I bring is exactly what you said in your question, which is reassuring leadership to the country. This is a really turbulent time for people. People are very anxious about the cost of living. Addressing the cost of living was central to the budget propositions that my government brought forward. People are worried and anxious about the international situation. It is a troubling time. And I think people are looking for somebody that they can trust, that they can rely upon, that can give them reassurance. And that's what I offer.
Cheeky one, you're going to the World Cup?
I certainly will be, yes. That's another good reason for winning the election and remaining First Minister, is getting to go to the World Cup as First Minister.
First Minister, thank you for your time.
My pleasure, thank you.